Good evening. Welcome to another show, another edition of the Dominance Academy. Appreciate you being here. I appreciate you catching on the replay, because you could be doing something else, but you're watching this instead, getting an education. Today we're going to talk about treating a woman like a dog. And how good it is for her and how good it is for you. You might be thinking, oh man, that's so misogynistic. It's not. Because misogyny requires disdain. Right? Misogynistic is defined by feeling, showing, or characterized by a hatred or prejudice against women. And treating them like a dog is actually making them more lovable. And they will love you for it even more. I mean, provided she's attracted to you and wants to be on your program. So when she's on the program, part of the program, well then, what are you going to do? You know, because a lot of guys, I think I mentioned this in the last stream, how a lot of guys they'll say, well, all she has to be is fit, feminine, friendly, right? And that's all that's necessary. That's all that's required, is to be fit, feminine, and friendly. And I asked, I gotta ask, well, what the fuck you gonna do then? Let's say I introduce you to a fit, feminine, and friendly woman. And she's like, hi, my name is Jennifer. Pleased to meet you. And she's ladylike and gorgeous, well put together. She's healthy. What are you going to do with her? Her being fit, feminine, and friendly doesn't mean she's attracted to you. It doesn't mean that you have influence over her. It doesn't mean that you automatically have a program. It doesn't mean that you know how to implement said program. It doesn't mean that you can create stages of development to strengthen day by day her time on the program, so that the more time she spends, the stronger the roots become. So sure, we would all like to have fit, feminine, and friendly women, but let's say all the women are that way. Are your problems solved? No, not really. You just have a greater pool to choose from, and that's about it. You just have a greater pool, or a better pool, I said, so to speak. But it really doesn't change you at all. So if you're uneducated, if you're a loser, if you have low self-esteem, if you're ignorant to certain things, it's not going to solve your problems, right? She's just going to be ready for you, and then you're just going to be standing there with your hands in your pockets, or twiddling your thumbs. So just know that piece of the puzzle. So treating her like a dog really is about mastering influence without fear. And for those of you who are dog owners, I'm a dog owner. If you've ever trained a dog, you already understand 80% of what it takes to influence a woman. The problem is that most men are too afraid of her emotional bark, so to speak. So when you train a dog, you don't beg, you don't negotiate, you don't get scared when it barks. You lead, you set the tone, you assume calm authority, you give clear commands, you reward what you want, and you stop rewarding what you don't. The truth is, most men fail with women for the same reason bad owners fail with dogs. They're inconsistent. They're afraid of emotional pushback. They don't own their role as leader. So tonight we're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you how the same psychology that works on a dog will work on a woman, if you're man enough to use it. So there's a bit of a caveat, right? So again, this is what I always have to put this shit in here, the caveats, because you guys might be looking for answers, which I applaud you, right? I applaud that you are looking for answers. There's nothing worse than being stupid to your own problems. The next worse is being aware of your problems, right? And not doing anything about them, but you're aware of them. And then the next stage is to be aware of your problems and to be doing something about it. And then the next stage is being aware of your problems, doing something about it, but doing things that actually get you out of the situation that you're in, that solve your problems. It's like, when I was teaching illustration, I would tell my students to fill up their sketchbooks and said, let me see your sketchbooks after a week of using them. And for the most part, they'd show me the sketchbooks and it would just be full of nonsense. Doodles, sometimes studies, sometimes something out of their imagination, whatever. It was haphazard. And I said, okay, you've consistently created a bunch of randomness. Like, good job. Pardon me. And like, to some degree, that's okay, but it doesn't really exercise those muscles. Okay. I said, how you should be handling your sketchbook is, on this page, you're going to do 50 hands. On this page, you're going to do 50 noses. On this page, you're going to do 50 ears. On this page, you're going to do the head from multiple angles, every angle you could possibly think of, like just the head shape. Okay. Not the details. Like, that's how you should be breaking things down. So you create the muscle memory. And so that's part of having a plan to get out of the situation you're in, be it your own emotional state, your mental paradigms that might have you stuck in a certain way of seeing things and causing you suffering, or just having a woman that is, not able to follow your lead. So the first thing here is conditioned associations. And you're all familiar with Pavlov's dog, or if you're not, like, you read a book, okay? Pavlov, he had a very simple experiment where he used a dog and a bell and a treat dispensing device, and basically linking the treat with the bell. So every time the bell went off, a treat would come out, all right? Or every time a treat come out, it would be preceded by a bell. So then over time, the dog would start associating the sound of the bell with treats. And then he started removing the treats, and it was just the dog and the bell. And he would ring the bell, and the dog would start salivating. So now the dog is salivating, like with the what a dog would normally do with the presence of food, but he's salivating with the presence of this of a sound of a bell. They're completely unrelated things. And so this sort of training is used all the time with dogs. All the time. So I'll bring like a little pocket full of treats, and we'll be walking up to a corner. And when I go to a corner, I want the dog to sit. So I'll do the sit commands. I'll bring the food up like towards their nose, and then bring it up so that their head goes up, and this will naturally cause their butt to sit down. At the same time, I say sit, and then I give them a treat. And we do this every single time. To them, I don't have the treat, and I just move my hands in the direction while saying sit, and then he sits. And then after a while, I remove my hands movement and I just say sit, and then he sits, to create the association between my voice and the action. So women also form subconscious links between your tone, your touch, or a look, or a desired state. And the whole idea is that you want to use the states intentionally. You want to be intentional about these things. And I think this is one of the biggest problems guys have, is that their interactions with a woman are, it's like they're too present. They're too immersed in what's happening. And from time to time, that's okay to do. But the majority, I would say 80% or 85%, maybe even higher, of your interactions with women should not be immersed in what's going on with her. And for those of you who are emotive beings who, sit in your emotions and love the butterflies and all that shit, that's going to be kind of difficult for you. I know it is. But that's just, it's part of the thing that needs to happen. So, but in order to implement some of this stuff, in order to create links between your tone, your voice, your words, touches, other sounds, looks that you give them, or emotional states, these cues have to be intentional. You have to be thinking about what's the desired effects that you want to create. And then you start utilizing these things over and over and over. Okay, so and this is a more sexual one. So for example, like one of my girls, actually with all of my girls, I do this. I tell them at first, once they've created like an emotional bond with me saying good girl. Okay, so first it's them doing things that I approve of. And then I say, good girl. Now, I don't do this every single time because, like with any sort of stimuli, when you get it often, your brain gets used to it, and then it just kind of goes into the background. It doesn't have the same emotional punch. So I don't do it all the time. Sometimes I forget, or I purposely leave it out. And that's to maintain the punchiness of the phrase. So over time, a little bit of time, they learn to feel good because it's a sign of recognition. All right. And they feel good about this and like, oh, great. Sir is paying attention to me. He's giving me recognition. That makes me feel good. I feel seen, recognized, cherished, or what have you. Then I move it a step further. And I say, every time I say good girl, I want you to flex your pussy for me 5 times, right? And it's the same sort of flexing that you do, like when you're taking a piss and you use those muscles inside to push out that last bit of pee. They use the same muscles. They have the same exact muscles, and it causes the muscles inside their pussies to flex. So I tell them, first I get them to understand what that is, and then they can use like a finger or something like that to try to grip around their finger. They say, okay, that's what it is. And now every time I say good girl, I want you to flex this muscle 5 times. So now I'm not only creating a bridge between my words and their pleasant emotional state of recognition and, you know, them pleasing me. All right. It's now moved into something into their body. So their body is now feeling something, and it's something specifically sexual, but it's not like pussy wetting sexual. It's a different sort of thing. It's drawing awareness to their pussy more so. Okay. It's not going to make them wet. So, but that's not the point. The point is to make this bridge between my words saying good girl and her pussy automatically responding to my voice. Okay, that's the whole idea. And you keep this up, and without a doubt, okay, if they have the the prerequisites of being really interested in you and being sexually attracted to you and holding you up on a pedestal, you implement these things, and without a doubt, this will work. So then every time you say good girl, her pussy will move like just like breathing, blinking, or any other sort of involuntary muscular response. And that's that's the thing that is key, right? Is using these cues intentionally. You can't just be haphazard about shit. Like leadership, you guys want to be leaders, right? You're like, yeah, I want to be a leader, which is like a stupid thing to want anyways. But either it happens or it doesn't. But in order to be a leader, you have to be intentional about the things you think, say, and do. Nothing is by just inspiration, right? You're feeling inspired, so you just do something. Like, it doesn't really work that way. Okay, you have to be thoughtful. You have to be mindful, strategic, and do things with purpose. Don't act purposeless. It's stupid, right? Like, that's for boys. Okay, men don't act without purpose. Like, what's the point? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's like you wouldn't purposely or purposelessly spend your money, right? You'd be like, yeah, that's stupid. Why would I do that? So why would you purposely or purposelessly say that 10 times fast? Why would you purposelessly think or speak or act? You treat your money resource differently. Why wouldn't you treat your other resources differently or just the same? Okay. So to give you an idea of like sort of how this works, think about a sound or a smell or a song that instantly takes you back to a memory. And this is just to give you an idea of how certain anchors work, how certain triggers work. And like a whole host of things come to mind. Like if I hear certain songs from the 80s, I will be transported back to this roller rink that I used to go to all the time. Like on the weekends, that was the thing we did, right? My mom would take me and my friends to this roller skating rink and we would roller skate. Okay. And it'd be like a Friday night or Saturday night. It's like, what else are you going to do when you're 13? You know what I mean? And because that's where the other like kids were. There were girls there, other guys like you knew, but like we're in different schools. And they're playing good music. There was video games. They had pizza, hot dogs. Like, it was a fucking awesome spot. But if I hear those songs, like certain songs from the 80s, I'm transported back to that roller rink. And the smell of this, because they would use like a certain cleaner or some sort, maybe like a lubricant or something. I don't know what they put on roller rinks, but they're very smooth. And it's that smell. I think it was whatever they put on that rink. It had an odor and it just stuck with me. But it's linked to the music. All right, number 2 here, clear single word commands, right? Think about the dog still, okay? So in training, You wouldn't say, hey, Fluffy, why don't you come on over here and take a seat? No, you just walk over to it, and with calm authority, you just say, sit. And that's it. You're not overly expressive. You don't try to explain yourself or defend yourself or anything like this. You just say, sit. Because you have assumed, like what I said before, you've assumed dominance in the situation. You've assumed that I'm the authority and you're not. And so you're not going to make your commands very complicated, right? And a couple of my guys have done that. Like I've told them to make commands, and I've made the mistake of not explaining it. Like I take it for granted sometimes that I know what I mean when I say just give a command, because in my world it's very simple. It's simple, direct, to the point. There's no filler words. There's no explanations. There's no color to it, right? I'm not trying to dress anything up to make it land better. I'm just saying what needs to be said. Okay. So, like, like I said, like a good example would the difference between saying sit or would you like to sit down? So imagine you're out with your girl and you go to like a bar and you say, would you like to sit at the bar or would you like to grab a booth? That's sure, that's pretty regular. Okay. But that's not very commanding. That's not very commanding at all. It's just where would you like to sit? You want to sit at the bar? Sit at the bar. If you want to sit at a booth, sit at the booth. Either one, grab her hand, walk to sit to the booth and say, sit down. Or if you want to be extra authoritative, you just say, sit. Now, you might be thinking, gosh, that sounds harsh. Okay. But imagine changing the demeanor to the opposite of what you're thinking. So in your head, you're thinking that sounds too authoritative just to say sit. Okay. Now imagine someone as smooth as James Bond, right? With his smooth swagger, charming face, this slight smile on his face, and he says, sit. That's totally different than fucking, Cobra Commander coming through back in the 80s saying sit, right? And giving this harsh command. Okay. So a lot of these things, they're just commands. It's just a word. And it can be, the flavor of it can be changed based on other factors, your demeanor, your posture, the tone, the sharpness in your voice, and how smooth or coarse your overall vibe is. A lot of that stuff can be altered to change how well the command is swallowed. All right, number 3, operant conditioning, reward and correction. So behavior is shaped by what follows it. Rewards increase it and correction decreases it. And we face this stuff all the time, everywhere. Okay. So insurance, do you know what I mean? Like insurance for your car, you've got one particular premium. And if you are really good, and you can get like these little devices that you connect to your car's computer, and it like monitors your driving. And I think you can get your premium lowered over time. But don't quote me on that. I forget what that little device is actually for, but it might do that. But if you get into an accident and you do what they don't want you to do, your premium goes up. And like, ah, shit. So now your behavior is going to change. You might drive a little more careful, right? Now your head's on a swivel. There's all sorts of these things. So the life is full of consequences, tons of consequences. And consequences aren't necessarily bad. Okay. The word consequence just means outcome. So there's positive and negative outcomes and neutral outcomes. So life is full of consequences. Every single choice you make has an outcome, because every time you choose something, that also means you're not choosing a whole bunch of other things. And from that choice, it spiders out into, like, it spiderwebs out into a whole series of other things. And that's just how reality works. From those things, we get rewards, we get, you know, uh, demerits, we get corrections, and along the way, our behavior is course corrected. Okay, either by a set of laws that we have created for ourselves, and that's what we do at the academy, or say by society, by the laws that we live in, the laws of the state or the laws of your city. Okay, sometimes it's something, you know, more esoteric, like the laws of a religion. But all of these things, they have their pluses and minuses, their corrections, their rewards, and their punishments. And this is how the behavior gets switched around. Okay, there's a whole, like, the whole thing of like, hey, if you're bad in life, you're gonna just burn in hell for the end of time, or until the end of time. Like, that's a sort of a way to course correct behavior by injecting fear. Look what happened during COVID, right? They put out all these fearful messages, and they say stay in your home, and everyone was like, okay, I'll stay in my home. So there's all sorts of these things happening throughout our lives. So why can't you implement the same sort of strategies in your relationships? Why can't you implement the same sort of strategies with yourself? Right? With, say, you're aware of a certain behavior that you don't like, that you'd like to get rid of. You can create a reward and punishment system to expunge that behavior from your life. But you have to stick to it. And the key is that rewards and punishments have to have an emotional punch to it. It has to have emotional impact. That's where it's most important. Okay. So let's say somebody does something wrong. They say, okay, well, you know, the punishment for this is you're going to get a whipping. All right. Now, let's say the person has a rare condition where they don't really feel much pain. Or let's say they're a masochist. You whip them, it doesn't really emotionally hit them in the guts. It doesn't touch them. So you have to find something else that really makes a strong emotional resonance in them to make them feel the shame and the guilt of their wrongdoing. That's the whole idea. So if you're using this on yourself, you have to think in the same terms. Some sort of punishment that you can exact on yourself that will give a strong emotional impact. Same with rewards. Where the reward for doing the thing that you want to do, or the habit that you're trying to create, that has a strong reward, and that you can feel good about, so that you're going to want to, so that your brain, your subconscious, just remembering that dopamine hit from doing the thing. So then eventually you start making the association between, oh, if I do this thing, aka this new habit, then I feel good, right? Because of the reward system. Remember the bell and the food, yeah? And you can do the same shit with the woman in your life. I'll say this though, don't fucking do this shit with girls who are not on your program. Like, you can do this as far as, say, boundaries go, but don't waste your time with this sort of training with a girl who's not on your program. It'll be a waste of time, because they're not really gonna land the way they're supposed to land. So just keep that in mind. So the other thing with operant conditioning is the speed. It's all about timing. So the speed between her action and your response determines the effectiveness. So if, you know, someone praises you for something you did 3 days ago, does it really hit the same? Not really, right? Like, if you made this massive accomplishment, like you graduated college, and then a month later, someone says like, "Oh, hey, I heard you graduated college." Like, it's their congratulations just really isn't going to feel quite as special if they told you the day of, right? Or the same with the punishment. You know, if you know, I create a punishment for something that they did last week, they're not really going to remember it. So you got to catch that shit right away. This is why I talk about using the hatchet. The hatchet is fast. It comes out very quickly. And it can, so that it can act in the moment, and you stop the behavior in the tracks. And again, you can't just stop it. You have to say, okay, this is what's allowed, not only just what isn't allowed. You got to show the fence, but you also got to show the place where they can do what you'd like them to do. So timing is really, really fucking important. Really important. And this is going to challenge your fear, because maybe on a theoretical level, you might think, yeah, like that sounds great. Like, of course I should do that. But in the moment, just like what Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Everybody's theories and plans work out great until you're in the moment where you have to actually implement them. That's when this shit is real. That's when your test of your manhood is real. That's when you get to see what you're made of and where your balls are, if they're hanging between your legs or tucked up into your stomach. When she says something or does something that's not in line with what they should be, do you let it roll? Do you sweep it under the rug? Do you pretend you didn't see it or hear it? Or do you calmly, with authority, address the behavior right away? And it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a fucking restaurant. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the dance floor. Doesn't matter if she's over at your place eating dinner, like with your family. You would do that shit. Say, excuse me a second. Jennifer, will you see me in the other room? Because you don't want to publicly embarrass anyone. So will you excuse us for a minute? Jennifer, meet me in the kitchen, please. And you address that shit right away. And then you can enact a punishment right then and there. We'll deal with this at home. But if anything like that comes out of your mouth again, we're picking up and leaving immediately. Do you understand? And that's the way it needs to be dealt with. No fear of the bark. You can't be afraid of the dog and train it at the same time. You understand? You have to be completely fearless of the dog. Sure, there's respect for the dog. Okay? You want to respect it because that aids in the training. So you're not outwardly trying to disrespect the dog or disrespect the woman, because that's going to have adverse effects. And that's not what we want. We want respect and obedience. So you have to treat things with respect in order to create respect. You can't treat things like shit and expect respect. You'll get fear, you'll get resentment, but you won't have respect. All right, number 4 here. Let me check on you guys. All right. So number 4 here, variable reward schedule. Okay. Otherwise known as intermittent reinforcement. Oh yeah, that's great. Hang on one second. Yes, very. So, like, this is a submissive of mine training her and doing like edging, and so here's a great example. Okay, so edging and anal, right? So these are two things that I've been kind of like bringing together. So the nerve endings in an anus are different than the nerve endings, say, on a clitoris. Like a clitoris's nerves are specifically designed for pleasure. That's it. There's no other purpose. The anus, it's not designed for pleasure. Like, certainly that stimulation can feel good to some people, and it cannot feel good to other people. And so my thinking is, well, I want to turn this into something that feels good. Not only that, but I want to turn it into something that feels good, so good that it can bring about orgasm. in the same way that vaginal or clitoral stimulation can bring about an orgasm, right? Because that link isn't naturally there for most women. Some women it is, absolutely, okay? But most women it's not. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to create this association. So I've been taking her through some training, right? Just some plug training. And throughout the week, it's a couple times throughout the week. Was it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday? That's what it is. So Tuesday and Thursday is just wearing it. Like you wear it for an hour, and just to get comfortable with that, the whole notion of something being in there. Okay. Then Thursday, there's other bits of training. I can't remember the details of that one, but on Saturday, they edge themselves, right? Edging through clitoral stimulation 5 times. So just bring up to orgasm and then stop. And then like let the nerves calm down, and then bring up to orgasm and then stop and let the nerves calm down. You do this 5 times in a row, all while the plug has been sitting in for an hour. Okay. Then going without clitoral stimulation, because now all those nerves are they're really stimulated, they're really sensitive. So to get to orgasm would be super easy, okay, just by like probably a few taps on the clit, like without stopping, and probably within seconds, like they'll come. So so then all that stimulation has risen up, okay, and then I say, okay, now take the plug and start fucking your ass with it until you have an orgasm, right? With no clitoral stimulation, just the movement of the plug. And lo and behold, boom, there's an orgasm. Okay, so I've taken advantage of the heightened the heightened nerves from all that edging and transferred it to the actions of the plug, right? The ass fucking with the plug. So you do this again and again and again and again, right? And now an association starts being built between orgasms and anal stimulation, to the point where no edging will be necessary. So you start with like 5 edges, then you go down to 4 edges, then 3 edges, then 2 edges, 1 edge, and then no edging. Right? This is like after days, many days of doing this, you start reducing them, okay? To the point where no edging is necessary. And you say, fuck your ass with the plug or a dildo or something like that, and orgasm can be achieved. So you see the same thing with the bell, the bell and the food and the drooling. You're taking away the food, and now there's drooling with bell. Completely unrelated. Now these aren't completely unrelated, but they're loosely related. But typically women don't have orgasms through anal stimulation. And now I've created that link. Anal stimulation equals orgasm. And then to top it off, I've already trained her orgasms to be on command only, which you could absolutely do through this similar process over time, to where they, of course, trust needs to be into that whole thing, and high levels of attraction and things of that nature. But as far as like structure goes, the logistics of it, you absolutely can train to come by command only, with no stimulation whatsoever. Yep. So, yeah, to the point where you can just say it and it happens. All right. So going back to the variable reward schedule. Okay. This is otherwise known as intermittent reinforcement. So dogs trained with unpredictable rewards stay more engaged. So if every time the dog sat when I said sit, and I said good boy and give him a treat, that just never changed. Sit, sits down, good boy, treat. Sit, sits down, good boy, treat. Every single time without fail. Now he's just expecting the treat. right? It's not really driving in the commands to the action. It's just, you're just instilling that, okay, great. Like every single time I listen, I'm going to get a treat. And that's not what you want. You don't want to create that association. You want the association to be command equals action. And so you have to be using intermittent reinforcement. So just like I said before, like about the good girl stuff, the good girl and the praise or whatever doesn't happen all the time. Another way to show it, and it doesn't have to be with rewards always, is sometimes there's not going to be punishment. So let's say the girl does something that would normally receive a punishment. Let's say she's kind of like she's not too prompt, okay? Maybe a little forgetful or mindless about time. Nothing terrible, but every single time you guys make plans, she's like 10 minutes late. And you've given her a punishment, and then like that corrects it just a little bit. But let's say you just punish her every single time, every time this happens. And let's say it happens often. And then on like the 7th time, you don't do shit. You do nothing. You pretend like you didn't even notice. That is going to be a pattern interrupt for her, because that's what this is, like variable reward schedule, variable punishment schedule. What that is a pattern interrupt. That's what intermittent reinforcement does. And it makes the thing either that you're adding or that you're removing, such as like not punishing, it makes it stand out stronger, because the subconscious mind was like, okay, I'm expecting this thing, expecting, and hey, where's that thing that I see all the time? And it like kind of shakes off the cobwebs and brings alertness back and saying, what's going on? This is not what I usually experience. I usually experience a spanking or a scolding or a, pussy whipping or something. And he's not even noticing. What's going on? And now all of her senses are perked up. And now she's like, wait, did I do something more wrong than being late? Or like, was I actually on time? Or I don't know what's going on. Right? And the same thing is with rewards. The same thing is with rewards. If you're giving a reward or praise or something along those lines, and you're always giving it, right? That's gonna, it's punchiness, it's potency. That's a better word. Its potency will lose its strength, and we don't want that. So you can give rewards, you can give praise or what have you, whatever moves her emotionally. Remember, it has to be emotionally fulfilling. It has to have emotional impact, whether it's a reward or a punishment. These things have to, they have to have that emotional impact, so that if you remove them, it becomes very much noticed. And that's what you want. You want to be able to have that influence, that power. So intermittent reinforcement is incredibly powerful. So a woman stays attentive when praise, affection, attention becomes unexpectedly never on autopilot. So it's unexpected. Not always, okay? So not always unexpected, but you don't want it to be always predictable. So be a little bit predictable, and then every so often throw in some unpredictability. Like I said, if you want to train something, you have to be intentional. You have to be strategic. You have to be thinking about these things. You can't just sit back and relax and think that, hey, if I'm a cool guy, my dog's going to be cool too. Now, certainly it helps to have a relaxed demeanor with dogs. And as far as women go, you should also have a relaxed demeanor. Okay? You should never be flying off the handle with either of them. But you need to be strategic. So just think about it, like, which is more exciting? Knowing you're going to get the same gift on every Friday, or not knowing when it's coming? So that you got to think about those things. All right, number 5 here, shaping behavior step by step. You don't, so like if you're teaching a dog how to do something new, like to fetch, right? You don't teach fetch all at once. Fetch is a series of actions put together. Okay, or like let's say you want your dog to get your shoes in the morning. That's a fairly simple action, right? To just like go over, grab the shoes and bring them back. But that's a simple action when it comes to humans, the way humans think about it. As far as dogs are concerned, that is a multi-step process of listening to a command, locating where your shoes are, grabbing them, and then bringing them back to you. This is a multi-step process. So when you're thinking about your woman learning something new, learning a new behavior, learning a new habit, whatever, you have to think about it in terms of steps. And this will allow you to break it down easier for her. And it will make things easier to learn. I remember when I was reading one of the books Bruce Lee wrote, and he was talking about learning certain kicks or teaching certain kicks. Like his kicks, I mean, a kick is just like one movement, but he would break down his kicks into like 5 steps. And so that's how he would do it. And he would master each of the steps. He would do each step like 1,000 times. So do 1 and then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start building on it until it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he would do this with all of his shit. So that by the time you get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've done one, like, 5,000 times. Do you see how that breaks down? So this is another way where you can break things down into steps and how you would actually go about training a new habit or a new feature. Get detailed. Look at things in steps and break them down. So another way to look at this, like, have you ever quit something that you've started because the jump from start to finish was just too big? That gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. So another way to look at it is this, back when I was a trainer, like I used to be a personal trainer many years ago at Equinox Fitness in Manhattan. And I would have people coming in all the time, like looking for personal training. And they would say, I'd say, all right, well, let's talk about your goals. When you're doing like the initial consultation, tell me about your goals. And they would be like, I want to be hot. Like this was the thing, like a lot of women would say, I want to be hot. I'm like, okay, like what does that look like? Right. So they would describe it to me. And their notion of hotness was their goal. And that goal was so far from where they were. It makes, like, of course, like once like the inspiration and the motivation wears off and they're really looking at all the steps to get there, they lose motivation immediately and they lose the ability to follow through. So after I get their vision and me realizing, yeah, that goal is going to take 5 to 10 years of hard work, I don't tell them this, but I say, all right, well, let's break this down into more reasonable steps. Okay. So yes, let's hold that grand vision. All right. But let's choose a vision that is more attainable right now. How about dropping 1 dress size or 2 dress sizes? Let's make that our first mini goal on our way to the goal of hotness. Okay. Because if the goal is like so lofty, then without the steps to get there, it's very easy to lose motivation. It's very easy to feel intimidated and lose your gas, right? You can easily gas out and give up. And I think a lot of people, they have lofty goals simply so that they can give themselves an excuse to give up and say, ha, well, yeah, of course I didn't climb Mount Everest. It's fucking Mount Everest. So why did you set a goal that was so high? Set a goal for something that's just outside of your reach, not the fucking moon. Set a goal that's just outside of your reach. Reach that. Then reach another goal that's just slightly out of your reach, right? That's exactly like if you're into lifting, like that's the progressive overload principle. You don't come in and you drop 2 45-pound plates on your bench every week. That's impossible. You just add 10 pounds and then 10 more and then 10 more and then 10 more and then 10 more, right? And then before you know it, you can drop that 45 plate and like the next week without a problem because you've adjusted. So it's really important to understand shaping behavior step by step and making sure that each step is done correctly and done right, and then reinforced. Like when it's done right, then there's positive reinforcement most of the time. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes she gets no recognition for doing it right. Okay, because you might think like, well, why would I do that? Well, for the thing that I explained, okay, so you don't want them to get used to getting praise for certain things, okay? You also want to dissuade their mind from seeking out the praise, like waiting, like, oh, goody, okay, where's the praise? I'm waiting for the praise. I did it right. Where's my treat? Right? You want to not get into that habit. Okay, so you want to avoid that thing from happening. Also, the praise can over time can actually start to decline. So the amount of non-praise, okay, the times of silence, actually starts to overtake the times of praise. So 80-20 then becomes 20-80, where it's 80% praise and 20% no praise. Eventually starts shifting over to 80% no praise and 20% praise. And the reason for this is that if you're in a DS situation, and granted, this is not for everything. This is my view, okay? For those like, BDSM nerds out there who find contention with this is my view, that you don't want service to be anything but in the spirit of service, and that is it. Service that's not done out of feeling good, not service that's done out of pride, not service out of because I'm happy because it makes you happy, not service because I'm expecting something, just service for the sake of service. That's it. There's no mind about it. There's no emotion about it. It's just done. And that's it. Now you might be thinking that sounds robotic. It could possibly be. But it's presence. It's being very much present. Very much present. Like being a Zen master about it. Because if one is looking for the emotional spike or looking for a reward or something like that, that's casting the awareness into the future. They're not present. If you're completely present, there's no expectations. Because all of the mind is staying right here now with whatever is being done. So in my view, the ultimate form of submission is to be in a state of doing it just for the sake of doing it. Because that's what the state of being calls for. Not because it makes you feel good, not because it makes me feel good, not because there's some sort of reward happening, but because that's just what your nature does. Like a kangaroo hops. That's it. Like there's no meaning behind it. It just does what is natural to its existence. All right. Enough of my ranting about that. All right, number 6, extinction. Remove the payoff. So this is sort of, what I was talking about. So if a behavior gets no reward or reaction, it fades. So this is sort of like that intermediate phase, right? Where you're training something. So you don't want to have no rewards. This is why it has to be intermittent, right? 80% of the time there is a reward, or 85%. There is a reward. There's some sort of recognition. There's the good boy, right? The pat on the head, the little treats, the belly rubs, the hug, whatever, however you choose to praise the dog, right? You praise the woman in the same way. Well, not in the exact same way. But if you wanted to, you could pat her on the head and say, good girl, and give her a little chocolate. You could absolutely do that. Whatever you want to do, okay? But it has to be emotionally engaging for her. And so just know that, like, if there's no reward, there's no recognition, zero, like from the start, then the behavior will fade, because it needs that emotional hook at first. That's what's needed, is that emotional hook at first, to then drive the behavior deeper into the consciousness. Okay? And you have to also ignore attention seeking that doesn't align with your standards. So just the same with the dog, right? If they're doing behavior that's attention seeking, you can't give it too much of your awareness. You can't give it too much of your time or energy. And it's the same with a woman. Unless she's doing something completely egregious, something completely that is boundary breaking or rule breaking or completely disrespectful, if it's not any of that stuff, like, fairly high level stuff, just ignore it as if it didn't even happen. And this will cause her to scratch her head and go, what the fuck, right? Especially if you had engaged with this behavior prior. And this is kind of like what some of my guys who are married, they go through. Their woman is like, they get confused because they realize that with certain behaviors, their husband would react in a certain way. They're like, oh, he always would get into fights with me. He'd always get into arguments with me about this stuff. Always coming back, right? And we go at it all morning long until, this or that happened. And now it's like he doesn't react. He's just cool as a cucumber. It's just placid, right? I don't get it. And this too would be a pattern interrupt. Her mind would be like this, and then it gets shifted. And she's like, wait a second, what's this? And now that gets her thinking, like, is there something wrong? Does he still like me? Is he still in love with me? Does he still want to be married to me? Am I pretty? Does he still think I'm pretty? Right? And it starts just spiraling into all this other shit. And now she's like, oh, he must be really mad at me. Well, fuck him. Or like, oh shit, like, I don't know what to do. It doesn't matter like what the reaction is. It's going to be some sort of reaction that breaks out of that cycle. And so this is very important. It's very important to do this. So, like, for example, like if you text someone and they never reply, how long before you stop trying? All right, number 7, desensitization. So reducing emotional overreaction. So dogs are slowly exposed to triggers until they remain calm. All right, I'm going to read that again. Dogs are slowly exposed to triggers until they remain calm. So whatever would trigger them and produce whatever sort of emotional reaction, they're slowly exposed to these things so that they can stay composed. They're trained to stay composed. So this can be done, like, let's say you've got a dog and a cat. Like, let's say you've been a cat owner, and then you buy a dog or adopt a dog. Initially, the dog is going to be crazy about that cat. and want to fuck with it, chase it, play with it, or whatever. Okay. So you slowly expose them to that trigger to show them, plus with the reinforcement, okay, the conditioning, that it can remain calm amidst these triggers. The dog can hang out beside the cat and not go fucking crazy. I've seen other sort of things where an owner would put like a little chunk of cheese or a piece of meat on the dog's nose or like on the snout, and the dog would just sit there. Now that's tough. Like usually if you take a little piece of raw meat or something like the raw steak and bring it down, like immediately that dog's gonna just chomp it out, take it out of your hands. Okay. But you're changing the stimuli, or you're changing the reaction to the stimuli so that they stay calm and centered until they're given the command to say, okay, go, you can eat now. And then like flicks it into the air and, eats it out of midair. So women can be guided. So women can be guided to handle your authority without flaring emotionally. If you hold ground without overreacting. So like I was saying in the beginning, it's really important to stay emotionally centered, to not ever be swayed this way or that way with regard to how she responds. This is something you absolutely do not want to fall into. Okay. And I know that's going to be tough. Like it's actually really tough. Like if you're prone to arguments, okay, if you're prone to arguing with people, it's going to be really tough to not engage when she's pushing back. It's going to be really tough for some guys who really enjoy the positive things. What I'm saying is basically you remain balanced. You don't go up when things are up, and you don't go down when things are down. You don't get excited. You don't get scared. You don't get worried. You don't get happy. You don't get overjoyed. You don't get angry. Like none of this stuff. All right. Maybe you waver just a little bit in some direction, but you're not stepping off of your square. You're not coming off of it completely. You're not even stepping a foot off. Both feet need to stay planted on your square, and maybe you'll waver just a little bit, but nothing significant. Because the whole idea is you want to train yourself not to react. You want to get into the place where you choose to respond. You don't want to react. You don't want to be this knee-jerk thing. And this absolutely will benefit your training, because you will come into situations that will trigger certain emotions in her, be it pleasant or unpleasant. And you have to remain grounded. You have to remain of that conductor mindset that I talk about, where you're on the podium, you're overseeing shit, but you're not immersed in the experience. You can't be. That's one of the sacrifices that the symphony conductor takes on. He cannot be part of the music because the music must follow him. You can't be part of something that is following you. That's just it. You cannot be immersed in the thing that is following you. So really, if you want to be a leader, you want to be able to influence, you want to have the kind of relationships that I'm talking about, you really have to take that to heart. You no longer will be able to immerse yourself in them. Now, there will be moments that you create that allow you to immerse yourself. Okay, certain scenes in the bedroom, for example, that the type of scene it is requires for a deep immersion. And I talk about that in my book. All right. If you want to get my book about how to be a dominant lover, it's in the links. Just go to the link, pick yourself up a copy. So there are times when you can be immersive, but it's planned. is strategic immersion for a certain purpose, right? Remember, we don't do things purposelessly. We don't do things without purpose. That just doesn't make sense. We do things with purpose, including immersing ourselves, losing ourselves into the moment. That is also done with purpose. So, where were we? All right. So, women can be guided to handle your authority without flaring emotionally, if you hold grounds without overreacting. So, with the dog, like I remember, it was funny. I was watching a Bill Burr stand up, and he was talking about how he got this dog. And he was telling a story about how he came to realize that his attitude was having an effect on the dog. And he's sitting there, and he's the type of guy who watches like a baseball game. And Bill is the kind of guy who will scream at the television. Like he'll literally get angry and shout at the TV. And he was telling me a story about that. He's sitting there with his beer and yelling at the TV while the game is going on. And his dog is sitting next to him, getting all fucking pissed off and growling and this, and that, and the other. And he's like, holy shit, like my attitude has an effect on my dog. I really have to watch myself. And then I think he was saying like maybe he went to anger management or something. I don't know. But the point is that your attitude has an effect on her attitude. Now, it's not always going to have an effect, but you should go into these things with that understanding that your calmness goes beyond just keeping you grounded. Okay, your stillness does more than that. It also teaches her, especially if she's flaring out emotionally and you don't. You stay calm, you stay still emotionally, you stay still physically, verbally, all of these. This then teaches her, because what will happen is that by the contrast, her actions will become really, or like her actions, her words, her emotional state, it'll become really apparent. It'll be very, very obvious, like as if like she's an actor and it's the only one on stage, and now a spotlight is on her. And that's not what she was looking for, right? It's not like she had like a solo act and that's what she was expecting. It was without the expectation of a solo act, but boom, she's alone on stage, that spotlight's on her, and she's doing this whole thing by herself. That becomes very, very apparent by way of contrast. So always remain calm. Always remain still. Okay, number 8, pack order and authority presence. So dogs relax knowing who's in charge. Women relax into femininity when leadership is consistent, calm, and unshakable. So you can't raise your voice. You can't get tight, like inside. You can't get frustrated. You can't get overly happy. You can't get overly sad. You can't get overly anything. You remain still. And I know that's going to be difficult. I know that's going to be difficult for a lot of guys. Like, especially if you're the type that easily flies off the handle, or you're a jokester, or you're prone to depression. Like, this is going to be challenging for you. But it must be done. If you want to have influence over the women in your life, or a woman, you have to practice stillness. But here's the thing, there's a little bit of a trick to it, okay? It's not a means of like muscling your emotions into submission. So it's not an act of doing something extra in order to will your emotions and like force them to be in place. What you're actually doing, and this is counterintuitive, is you're letting go. You're releasing your grip on them. And the more you practice doing this, the faster and faster and faster the emotions pass through you. So you could imagine some sort of maybe an instance from the past where something really pissed you off and you held a little bit of a grudge and you remembered that shit. And that anger stayed with you for days or weeks, or maybe you're still holding on to it years later. Okay. That emotion through reflection can be made to feel very real and very present. It's almost as if it just happened. With some people, they can bring back that anger as if it was the first day. This is not due to anything but grasping. Nothing but just holding on. And the moment you start to let go, it'll start passing through you. So let's say a new situation comes up, a new instance, something that, say, annoys you. Now you can hold on to it and then learn to let it go sooner, because you realize, like, oh, I'm holding on to this. That moment has passed, right? Like, let's say you went and got some food at a drive-through, right? You ordered a sandwich, some chips, and a drink or whatever, and you get your order. You're driving. You're a couple miles away, and you look in the bag now, and they forgot your chips. Now, you can hold on to that annoyance and grip onto it. And you could stay annoyed your entire way home until you get home. Or you could recognize that you're holding on to it. Recognize that grip. I mean, like, and accept that it's over. That portion of reality is over. It's done. It's already just crumbled into time. There's no going back. It's done. And you accept that. And you also have awareness that you're holding on to a fistful of ashes. Once you develop that awareness, you'll, from between the time of the instance and the time of you recognizing that you're holding it, gets shorter and shorter the more you do it. To the point where you're opening your hand almost as quickly as you close it. So that annoying situation comes up again. They forgot my chips. Oh, it's gone. To the point where it's so fast that you can't even see it. It's a blur. It's now there's no grasping at all. There's just a recognition to let it go. That's it. And it happens instantaneously. Oh, they forgot my chips. Like, by the time you recognize what has happened, you've already let it go. This is the state that you have to practice being in. Like, you think leadership is a fucking simple thing. Oh man, all I just got to have a girl is just fit, feminine, and friendly, and tell her what to do, and everything will be fine. No, there's deeper levels to this shit. There's way deeper levels. So if your emotions are not, because it doesn't say obedient, it says fit, feminine, and friendly. She can say no with a smile on her face. Okay? So your emotional reactions are more important than her being fit, feminine, and friendly. Your ability to grasp or release is much more important. So this is how you remain consistent, calm, still, and unshakable. You do this over time, that the quickly letting go, the faster and faster and faster you can do that, to the point where it just passes through you without resistance. That annoyance, it rises and falls as fast as it came in, and it goes out just the same way. There's no pause with you. It doesn't pause, get stagnated, become firm, turn into something, and now you've got this shit. No, it just passes right through with no resistance. Sort of like electricity. You guys know what a resistor is? It causes the flow of electricity to kind of change, and then it slows down, then goes back out. So this is what's necessary. And this is when doing this, okay, having this emotional, I want to say control, but it's not like having emotional control, because you're not controlling anything like the way you would control a dog on a leash, okay? That's not what you're trying to do. You're not trying to leash your emotions, right? It's a type of control where you're actually letting go. You're purposely not trying to control, which actually puts you in control of yourself. And this is what allows a woman to relax into her femininity more easily. Much more easily, right? Again, by contrast. Remember I was talking about the stage and the light and like her reaction, and you're being still, and that contrast causes a change. Well, another form of contrast is stillness and chaos. When she is chaotic, which is a lot of times, right? Even if they seem calm on the outside, inside, there's varying degrees of chaos. Mostly mental chaos and emotional chaos. And, some it's turned up very high, or maybe it's a certain day or certain week or a certain month, but there's fluctuations in the chaoticness, but it's always there. And to contrast that with you being completely not chaotic, calm, ordered, still, relaxed, authoritative, this is what allows her femininity to relax into it, because you're not like that. You're not frazzled. You're not frantic. You're not anxious. You are, for all intents and purposes, the direct opposite of her in every way. This is a good thing. Now, based on what I just said, you could see how things are shifting socially, why there's so many problems, why men are disconnected from their masculine core, why women are disconnected from their feminine core. That's why we're in such a mess. All right, but we won't get into that shit. I'm not one for talking about social crap. So, something to think about: if no one's in charge, who ends up in charge? Right? Is it the loudest, the most confident, the most competent, the toughest, the strongest, right? So when there's always somebody who's in charge, right? Shout out to Lucario. He always says there's always a leader and there's always a follower. Like whenever you're dealing with a man and a woman, in that dynamic, there's always a leader and follower. Now, sometimes it's overarching throughout the entire relationship. There's leader and follower, or it's constantly shifting based on the scenario. And personally, I find that to be exhausting. That to me sounds like way more work than training someone, without a doubt. Okay, number 9, training in all environments. So obedience in the yard means nothing if it fails at the park. So your influence should hold in private, in public, under pressure, on vacation, in the bedroom, at the airport, at the dinner table, while walking down the street, while she's alone or with you. Your influence needs to hold everywhere. So this is why I'm not like I accept it. Okay, trust me, I accept it, but I'm not the biggest fan of just like only in the bedroom dynamics. I know that works for a lot of people, actually more people than not. There's way more people who have bedroom only dynamics than 24/7 dynamics. And simply because I think that the scope of a 24/7 dynamic is just overwhelming. I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people. Or they don't know what to do about it. They don't know what it entails or how to do it, if they even wanted to. Like, it's easier to just kind of play the role for a little while and have fun. And if that's what you're into, that's totally fine. But I'm like, as far as like the growth of the individuals are concerned, I'm not saying that there can't be growth in a bedroom only dynamic, but I think it would probably be a lot slower. Because when you start integrating life into these things, it really calls into question of your character. It calls into question of your internal strength, your resolve, your ability to focus. So sure, there's obedience in your backyard, but you want to be able to go anywhere, take your dog to the park, and those same commands hold true when there's all these other dogs running around and you do your special little whistle and they stop, their ears perk up, and they turn around and just start trotting back to you. You want the same sort of shit in your dynamic. I mean, if you're having a 24/7, you want your influence to be everywhere, even when you're not there. I would say, especially when you're not there. Like, if you've got it, you understand it, you fucking get it. If your influence goes into your woman without you even needing to be there. And you might say, "Oh, well, that's like good loyalty." No, that's a sign of a good trainer, someone who understands emotional and psychological influence and has put it into practice with someone who is willing, someone who's enthusiastic about it, who's curious, who has the desire to meet the same ends. Okay. So, something to think about, like, if someone only respects you at home, but not in public, do you really have their influence? Probably not. This is why I don't like, fair weather friends. I don't like fair weather obedience. And I certainly don't like fair weather leadership. You have to be able to lead when the chips are down. She has to be able to follow when the chips are down. Not just when she's feeling good, not when she's just feeling horny. At all times. And you should be able to lead with the same precision, the same level of calm, the same level of confidence and authority, whether you're having a good day or a shitty day. Whether your health is good, whether your health is bad. Whether you're standing in front of her or it's over the phone. It doesn't matter. So, and if not, like, that's a good thing, right? Because if those things are missing, that means you have room to learn. And learning is great. So if any of this stuff, if you've got pockets, if you've got, voids in your program, and you're like, oh shit, like, I'm not doing any of this stuff. My mindset isn't like this at all, or whatever. Okay. That's not a bad thing. It's a great window of opportunity to say, I've got something fantastic that I can learn that will help out me and will help out my relationship. Okay. So if this is you, get in touch. My calendar is in the description of every video. All right. just go to the calendar link, grab a day and time that works for you, and we'll get further into details and talks about what's going on in your life. Okay, so training in all environments ends. Number 10, don't fear the bark. This is big, okay? This is having emotional authority. So if you flinch at growls or barks, you'll never master the dog. Never. Because when you do that, you're teaching the dog, oh, if I bark, if I get scared, or if I get a little anxious and I bark at him or growl at him, he'll back off. And then after a while, the dog's like, I see who's got the balls here. That's me. This much bigger thing thinks that he's superior, but actually I'm superior. Because if I just let out a little yip or a growl, they back off. They lose their composure. I guess I'm the one who's in charge. So in the same way, a woman's emotional outburst or emotional reaction, not necessarily an outburst, but the reaction is just noise. Your authority comes from not taking it personally or reacting to it. So, like if you're training your dog and it barks or growls, do you step forward? Do you step back? This is an important feature when thinking about dealing with a woman. Like if you've had like a point of contention with the woman that you're dealing with or that you're in a relationship with, do you step forward into it or do you back off? Do you defend yourself? Do you excuse it? Do you explain away? Or do you rationalize? Right? This is deering. Do you deer? Defend, excuse, explain, and rationalize. Do you get into it? You start fighting with the dog. Right? Getting on its level. Now you're no longer an authority. You're an equal. That's why it's really, really stupid to get into arguments with women. To put it in a very plain illustration, would a king get into an argument with a peasant? No. Why would they? Why would royalty get into an argument with a peasant? And this is what I'm saying. This is part of assuming authority. Now, it's a problem if the woman is also assuming authority. Now, if you want to get into a power dynamic relationship, it's going to be impossible if both people are assuming authority. Impossible. So choose a different woman. That's not to say that you could never break her down. All right. But know this. I have enough experience with women to know that if they have assumed themselves as a position of authority and there's emotional armor, there's reason for it. And it's not good. There's parental abandonment there, or some sort of pain that was very harsh, maybe abuse from either parents or a family member, right? Maybe there was some sexual abuse. Maybe there was abuse from a former lover or former boyfriend or previous husband. All of these things stack up and leave marks, and they stack and stack and stack, and then they calcify. They calcify on the surface. Like any guys, Naruto fans, right? That when Gaara first came on the scene, I was like, fuck yeah, look at this badass, right? And Gaara, he has this layer of compacted sand over his whole body, and it looks just like his body. So you can't be like, oh, you're wearing armor. His armor looks just like his skin. And it's like that. It's calcified, hard, and can withstand impact. That's the whole point. It brings you toughness. And sure, with the right kind of force, or the right kind of power, rather, okay, because we don't want to use force. Like, what was it? Sosuke, yeah. He lit up the Chidori, right? And he had the lightning on his hands, and he was able to pierce through the ultimate defense and like crack through that shit. Okay, I think not Guy, but the kid Bushy Brow. You know, he had like a super move, like wrapped him up and smashed him down to the ground when they were doing the exams. Cracked all of his shit when, you know, Gara hit the ground. But that's how a lot of women are. When they've had abuse, they've had abandonment, they've had pains. Now, surely you could say, hey, Justin, everyone is deserving of love. Sure, they are. Okay. But you have to discern for yourself what challenges you want to take on, what choices you will have. Because remember, in the very beginning of this show, I was talking about how one choice can spider web into a whole series of other things. Okay? You choose that woman who's wearing calcified armor, is wearing layers of pain and fear and anger that has become dense and compact and solid, that she wears outside of her, sometimes like a badge of honor. Do you want to choose that? You can. And that's not to say that it's impossible, okay, to get through that, okay? But you've got two choices. One, you can scrape at it little bit by little bit to create a hole. And this has to be very gentle and strategic to the point where they're not noticing. Kind of like, you ever seen Escape from Alcatraz? That old movie? Escape from Alcatraz. The guys, they broke through the wall with a fucking spoon for like months, just scraping at the wall to create a hole. And then they were covering it up with something. There's this old movie where they show it. Right? Check it out. Escape from Alcatraz, the old one from like the 60s or something. It's a great movie. And so that's one way. Just scrape until a little hole forms. Okay? And hope that she doesn't freak out by the exposure. Because in there's that little girl who's looking for safety, who's looking for security, consistency, right? And if you're not him, if you're not fully prepared, oh, you're gonna have a shitstorm. Or you could light up a fucking Chidori and smash through that shit. That's going to cause a tremendous amount of defense. Right? What happened after he got hit with that stuff? Or after he does get hit, you know, because Gara does get hit a few times. His sand goes working into overtime, defending himself even more. Right? Because it works off of like instinct or something like that. I can't remember. It's been a while. So it protects itself even more. That's what'll happen if you smash through that. Smash through their fear, their anger, their pain, to get that at the squishy center. That's going to be too fast. And I promise there will be adverse reactions. That again, if you're not centered, if you're not calm, grounded, and very much know yourself, you're going to have a fucking shitstorm. So, my advice is to choose someone who doesn't have this stuff, who doesn't have calcified armor around their bodies, around their soul, around their mind, around their heart. There's so many choices where you do not have to do this. Sure, does that mean that you might be alone for a little while? Fine. But I'd rather be alone than subject myself to the just the sheer amount of effort necessary. And I have compassion. I have compassion for the women who have had these types of lives. I wish that it didn't happen. I really, really do. I wish that girls were never sexually abused. I wish that girls were never abused psychologically and emotionally by their parents. I wish that the domino effect never started. Okay? Creating chain reactions of suffering. Their parents made them suffer, and their parents made them suffer, and their parents made them suffer. I wish that never even started. And I know that I could help, but the time and the effort, it's just, life is too short. At the end of the day, I need to look out for myself, just as you need to look out for yourself. And while I can have compassion for someone's state in life and the cards that they were dealt, I don't have to take responsibility for it. And neither do you. So if you want to make training fruitful, easy, fun for everybody involved, not just you, I suggest choosing someone who is open, who is willing to be vulnerable, who's willing to be curious and enthusiastic. This makes things a whole lot easier. Just like if you said, you know what, I would like to train a dog. What are the most trainable dogs in the world? I think it's golden retrievers. What's the attitude of a golden retriever? Happy, easygoing, intelligent, right? Like they're the number one for a reason. Now there's other dogs that are known to be very difficult to train. Okay? And I would say that those dogs, maybe not a particular breed, but perhaps there is a particular breed, but it's the ones that have been abused, that have been left in shelters for years. Then you try to take this dog home and train it, it's going to be very difficult. Impossible? No. The mind is the mind. The same levers work. We all have those levers. All the dogs have the same levers. But some of them are so rusted into place that it's going to take quite a bit to get them moving again. Do you have to choose that dog? No. Now, dogs are a little bit different. You might be saying, well, if I don't do something, it's just going to live out the rest of its life suffering in a pound. Maybe it'll be euthanized or just live out the rest of its days and die in a cage. So I'm going to take it home, even if it's difficult, so that it could live, just a few more years in a home with like good food and space and a backyard or whatever. Okay. And that's noble. But your nobility doesn't have to extend to humans. It doesn't have to extend to women in the same way. We're saying, oh, she's suffering. She's been through a lot. There's damage. She's scarred beyond belief. And she's got heavy layers of armor, combat armor. You're not obligated to do anything with your compassion. You do not have to save her from her suffering. So just take that to heart. Make whatever choices that you want, that you think are the best for your life. Because For all we know, pushing faith aside, we get one shot here, and that's it. So I want to just circle around really quick on this training her like a dog, okay? Or treating her like a dog. Treat her like a dog doesn't mean to treat her poorly. It means understand that leadership, trust, and influence come from clarity, consistency, and courage. If you're afraid of her bark, you'll never own her loyalty. Never. You have to be fearless. And being fearless is just letting go of the fear, not grasping to bravery, but letting go of the fear. That's what courage does. Courage lets go of fear. Bravery is something that you embrace. We don't want to embrace these things. We want to let go. And that's how you'll be able to gain her loyalty. By not being afraid of her bark, not being afraid of her emotional reactions, and staying still. So if you have any further questions about this, shoot me an email, justin@thedominanceacademy.com, or follow that link that's in the description of my videos. Hook up my Calendly, find a day and time that works for you, and we'll have a chat. Otherwise, go to my website, thedominanceacademy.com. Check out what I've got going on there. I've got a couple of free downloads, my book, How to Be a Dominant Lover, as well as training programs. If you have any questions about those things, send me an email and I'll clarify anything you need from that stuff. All right. Sorry. What's up, Efren? Intentionally responding from the commitment you have to the relationship with yourself. Okay. Salute. Hotep, Mr. Justin, what are some good movies that accurately interprets how BDSM actually is? That's a really good question. There's not many. There really isn't. Because you you can't show it. That's the funny part. It's everything that happens internally. Like all the shit that I just talked about. All right. Like, how do you show that on film? Sure, you can show a guy giving commands to a woman and her doing them. But that doesn't show the internal workings. And that's what's important here. That's the most important factor, is the motivation and the mindsets of the people that are involved. Otherwise, you just see, oh, somebody said to do something, the other person did it. But as far as like, yes, Efren, Rock Lee. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Thank you. So like a movie that I like is The Story of O. It's an old movie. I think it was like from the 60s or 70s. And it's got a funny premise. And basically there's this guy and he wants to train his wife to be a submissive. Actually wants to train her to be a slave. And so he takes her to this manor. And it's like this place where slaves are trained. And it's run by this one guy. It's like this master guy. And he has all these dominants that like kind of work for him, under him. And they do some of the training for him. And maybe he does some training on his own. But there's certainly that pyramid of dominance. And there's like the whole place is just like filled with slave girls that are like, they're naked wearing chains. Like they've got like an iron, like what they call manacles? Manacles? I can't remember what they're called, but like the iron clamps around their wrists with chains around their neck, that sort of shit. And he brings his wife. It's just a regular guy. And he brings his wife there and he's like, all right, honey, I'm going to leave you, dropping you off at summer camp. And I'm going to leave you here for a little while. And then the story of her like getting trained. It's nothing really explicit. It's the 70s. So like, yeah, you get like some boob shots, but there's no harsh training, like stuff that you would see like a BDSM video like on a porn site, but there's a lot of implied stuff, where they'll show like the shadow of something happening where a girl's getting whipped or whatever. But it's a cool movie. So yeah, it's called The Story of O. I'm trying to think of some others. I really liked that one. Um, let's see, what was it called? With James Spader. What was that movie? The Secretary. Yes, The Secretary was a good one. Um, Certainly not 50 Shades, because not that it's like a terrible movie, but in the film, I don't know if it was in the book, but in the film, he straight up says like, "I'm not a dominant." He said, "I'm a sadist," and there's a difference. So in 50 Shades, the Christian Grey, he was just in it because he enjoyed giving pain, and that's okay, but that doesn't make one a dominant. A dominant may want to give pain, but that's not the defining characteristic of a dom, right? Because some doms don't like to give pain; they're not sadists. So he basically tells her, like, "I'm not a dom; I'm a sadist." So with that said, that also implies that he's not a leader. He can lead, but he's not a leader because he's in it just for the satisfaction of giving pain. So 50 Shades isn't that great, but the Secretary is a good one. There's some very interesting stuff, and I believe it's James Spader, the guy who was black, something black, where he plays this weird like spy dude. But anyways, but yeah, check it out. The Office, The Story of O. Just do some certain web searches, like best BDSM movies. Let's see, BDSM movies. I'm sure you find like better ones if using AI could probably help. That's funny. People are saying Hellraiser. That's hilarious. The Story of O, Quills, Crash, Audition from 1999. Someone's saying like I wouldn't recommend Secretary. It's worse than 50 Shades. Yeah, so Secretary isn't a BDSM movie. It's a movie that shows some power dynamics and just how power dynamics can come up in very interesting ways. But a lot of times there's abuse because a lot of it was through coercion and manipulation, not through consent. Let's see here. Is there anything here? Professor Masterson and the Wonder Women, 2017. In the Basement, 2014. Apparently it's a little bit dark. Dogs Don't Wear Pants from 2019. The Piano Teacher, 2001. The 365 Days franchise on Netflix. Are You Lost, Baby Girl? Bound. I guess there's a movie called Bound. Blue Velvet from 1986. But some people hate it. And some people love The Secretary. Some people fucking hate it. Let's just search here really quick. Bear with me just a second. I want to see what my agent has to say. All right. The Secretary. Oh, Crash. Yeah, from 1996. That's a really good movie otherwise. There's some elements of BDSM, but Blue Velvet, Preaching to the Perverted, 1997. It's a British comedy. The Secretary, yeah, it was mentioned already. Night Porter, 1974, and a movie called Kink from 2013. So these are what came up for me when I just put the question in for GPT. Oh, excuse me. So that said, it's time for me to relax, and I'm going to get out of here. But thank you for joining me on this live, and thank those of you who are watching this on the replay. I appreciate you all. Again, check out the website, make an appointment, and we will talk to you soon. Take it easy.